glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm talking about the 49ers offensive depth chart week one. We already did defense, and, we kind of got some things figured out there. We think we know who's going to start. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think there's as many questions about who's going to start. There's probably more questions about depth and even some questions about maybe the offensive line. Yes, the wide receiver position. So there are some things we have to kind of figure out as we go through this conversation and kind of get it lined up. So that way, when we get to next week and we're talking about 49ers versus Seahawks, we know what matchups the 49ers are going to try to take advantage of. And of course, there are always moving parts. Kendrick Bourne is coming into town on Monday. He could end up shaking up this wide receiver room, shaking up this roster a little bit anyways, because there's got to be a corresponding move if he does sign to the active 53-man roster. There's a lot of things still to go on, right? They have to check him. He has to pass his physical. They're going to take a look at him, see where he's at. Now, the report is there's a framework on a deal for him in San Francisco. There's a framework on a deal for him with the Washington Commanders. Do the 49ers even let him make that cross-country trip to Washington on Tuesday? Well, we won't know until after Kendrick Bourne comes to San Francisco. So some things can still be fluid and changing, but I think we can really set the groundwork for what this 49ers offense looks like going into week one against Seattle. It's going to take all hands on deck. Everyone's going to have to step up to make an impact on this football team if they are going to win a lot of these NFC West matchups that they weren't able to win last year. Last year, 1-5 in the division, and that is completely different from what we had seen in the past. In fact, the year before, the San Francisco 49ers were 5-1 in division, and their one loss was week 18 to a Carson Wentz-led Los Angeles Rams. And I know this game well because I was there. And guess who the quarterback was for the 49ers? Sam Darnold. And so there are some interesting dynamics to this, but 49ers had a stranglehold on the NFC West in past years. Last year, it fell apart, and that is a big reason why they only won 6 games, and they're trying to turn it around, but a lot of it's going to fall on this offense early in the season as the defense is very young, tries to get their legs underneath them, and that's going to be asking a lot of not just Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, but also this wide receiver core who's got question marks, and maybe the offensive line does too. We'll give updates on offensive line as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating if you feel like I deserve it. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. San Francisco 49ers are favored to win the NFC West at plus 155, and the Los Angeles Rams are at plus 200. So there's kind of a closeness there, but right now the 49ers do have the advantage. If you're into betting, check out FanDuel. They also have future bets. Of course, all the in-season game day props are going to be coming your way. Game day lines are going to be coming out, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Check out FanDuel, the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. So let's get into this. Let's break down the quarterback position first. I think this is probably the easiest position to break down. Is your starting quarterback is Brock Purdy. Surprise, surprise. And then after that, it's going to be Mac Jones. And I know the 49ers have signed Adrian Martinez to the practice squad, and that's where he's going to remain. He will be the emergency quarterback for the 49ers. I do not expect that we are going to see Adrian Martinez this season. At least that is the hope. They're hoping that all you're going to see is Brock Purdy taking snaps, and then maybe you'll get a couple blowout wins, and Mac Jones can go in and take care of business down the stretch in some of those blowout wins, or even maybe Week 18 doesn't matter because the 49ers are secure in the playoffs, and they don't have to worry about playing in that matchup, and then you get some more Mac Jones the way we got Sam Darnold in Week 18 in 2023. We'll see. But I think this quarterback room is one of the better rooms the 49ers have had in the last couple of years. And you've got a legitimate backup in Mac Jones, a guy that can go out there and you can compete and you can win games in the meantime while Brock Purdy is out. And I think that he's really kind of taken command of his spot inside the pocket Mac Jones has. And so I think that he's going to be formidable. I think his timing has been really good. He's definitely getting better and better in this system. I think he's further along than we saw from Joshua Dobbs last year. He's definitely a lot better than a Brandon Allen. So major upgrade for the 49ers when it comes to backup quarterback. And I think the quarterback room, I just feel more comfortable about it. There's something about Brock Purdy that just makes us feel comfortable that he's going to go out there and produce and lead this team. And as long as Brock Purdy's at the helm, you feel like you have a chance to win every football game. That's exactly what the 49ers have wanted for years, and they've got it. So no more question marks. I don't worry every time he throws the ball that it's going to be an interception. I always think he's going to complete it. He's going to do something amazing. When it's an interception, I'm surprised. That hasn't always been the case with quarterbacks in San Francisco, but it is with Brock Purdy, and him and Mac Jones are going to do a great job. Now let's talk about running backs, and I think this one is pretty self-explanatory as well. Maybe a little bit of conversation towards the end of the depth chart, but Christian McCaffrey is your starting running back, and he's going to get a lion's share of the carries, a lion's share of the touches. It's going to be run the offense through Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, but they want to be a run-first offense. Now, you take what the defense gives you, so if the defense is loading up with 8 guys in the box, and we've seen teams do this, 5, 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, 2 linebackers, 3 linebackers, and they just really load the box, then yes, you have to rely on stretching this thing out horizontally and vertically and creating some opportunities where you loosen up the defense and then you can turn to the running game. So sometimes you have to rely on the passing game to get the running game going. But for the most part, if you're getting some basic sets, you're going to get the ball getting given to Christian McCaffrey. And then they get Brian Robinson, which is a great pickup. So you trade away Jordan Mason, and you kind of lost a little bit of the depth at the position. You had Garendo, but that guy that could get those tight, tough yards, that could come in and really get some tough yards for Christian McCaffrey, you lost that when you didn't have Jordan Mason. But the good news is the Jordan Mason trade yielded 2 positives. Number one, you didn't have to pay him $5.4 million. Number 2, you got 2 good players back using those picks. Number 1, you got Marquis Siegel, who may be your starting safety with this week against Seattle. And number 2, you got Brian Robinson. So a 2-for-1 deal, and you saved money. This is a win-win situation for the 49ers. And Brian Robinson is a proven commodity in the NFL. There's still a lot of tread left on the tires. He's a tough runner who gets extra yards after contact. He's one of those guys that seems like he always falls forward. He scores in the red zone. Last year, he had 8 touchdowns for the Washington Commanders. So this is a consistent player. And the 49ers are going to add him as nice depth to Christian McCaffrey and make for a good 1-2 punch. 49ers struggled mightily in the red zone last year without Christian McCaffrey. 2023, 68% of the time they converted for touchdowns. That was number 1 in the NFL, and by a lot. Then McCaffrey was injured for most of last season, and that number dropped dramatically. It was at near 40%. Just to give you an idea, it dropped over 20% last year in their effectiveness to score touchdowns in the red zone. Brian Robinson is going to be a big help. When McCaffrey helps you get down the field, now those tough carries and tough yards can turn to Brian Robinson, and he can get some of those touchdowns if McCaffrey's tired. It happens sometimes. He gets a long run, he's gassed. Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, those guys used to go clean it up. Last year was a little bit tougher. Isaac Garendo is not a great short yardage runner, even though he's a tremendously big back. He doesn't keep his pad level low consistently and somewhat struggles. Saw some improvements in the preseason, so I got to give him some props on that. But it's definitely Brian Robinson, and he's going to be a great player for the Niners. He can get carries every game, and you can feel like he's going to be consistently getting you positive yards. He's a chain mover, which you love to have as running back 2. Running back 3, I believe, is Isaac Garendo. And there was a conversation, earlier this week between me and John Chapman about, whether it was Garendo or Jordan James. And Jordan James has missed a couple weeks of practice. I think that sets him back. But make no mistakes, I believe Isaac Garendo is ahead of Jordan James for a couple of reasons. I think first off, he's already been in the system for a year. That gives him an extreme advantage. Number 2, he is a pretty good pass catcher out of the backfield and better than than what you're going to get from Jordan James early on in his career. So that aspect helps Isaac Guerendo as well. I believe Isaac Guerendo's vision is improving, that he's getting more comfortable in this offense. And I think we're going to see more opportunities for him to kind of break some big plays. And we've seen that big play potential last year. In fact, he finished the game off in Seattle because of a long run. So he's got the ability to make things happen. And I think that's another reason. And then probably the biggest reason is Kyle Shanahan trusts him when it comes to pass protection. Isaac Guerendo earned his trust last year with the way that he was able to develop in pass protection. That's something that he does well. He did it again in week 3 of the preseason. And so I think Guerendo, because of those reasons, is ahead. Now, Jordan James has some different strengths than Isaac Guerendo. Number one, we talked about Guerendo not being good in short yardage. Jordan James is very good in short yardage. He's one of those guys that converts touchdowns at a very high clip. Now, how much is he going to be asked to perform this year with Brian Robinson's addition? It may not be as many opportunities for Jordan James in year one. He might now take a back seat to Brian Robinson and eventually step into that role. Because I did believe when they drafted Jordan James, they drafted him because his strengths and Isaac Guerendo's strengths were different. And using them accordingly could definitely help this football team, where Guerendo could run the inside zone plays. He could run some of the outside zone with the speed, also catch the ball in the backfield. But Jordan James could handle red zone, short yardage, things that he did really good in college, where he converted a lot of first downs and converted a lot of touchdowns in his career, 33 red zone touchdowns in his career. Phenomenal the way that he was able to get it in. He's got a knack for finding creases, getting a low pad level, and keeping that leg drive and finding opportunities to get first downs. That's a great trait to have. Now, we don't really need it as much now because you have Brian Robinson and he does the same thing, and he's more experienced and he's a bigger running back. I mean, Brian Robinson is 6'2", 220. That's a little bit different than Jordan James, who's 5'11", 200 pounds. There's a difference between those two guys. But James is going to be a significant player for the 49ers in the future. I just don't know how much in 2025. Now, with Guerendo's injury history, there's always a chance you might see more Jordan James at some point. We'll see what happens. But right now, I think it goes Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson, Isaac Guerendo, Jordan James, and of course, your starting fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. And no, I do not believe that anyone has even come close to taking Kyle Juszczyk's spot. One of those easy ones, right? There's all kinds of easy ones. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. Those ones are, tremendously easy to figure out that they're the starters. Brock Purdy and Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey. Simple. Now let's talk about wide receiver. I think this one's going to be an interesting conversation for the mere fact that you're going to have some decisions to make because we don't know what's happening with Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings reportedly wants over $20 million as part of his extension per year. The 49ers are not going to pay Jauan Jennings $20 million. They love Jauan Jennings, but you can't afford to pay Brandon Ayuk what you're paying him and then pay Jauan Jennings $20 million per year on top of that. Jauan's playing a little bit of hardball. He's got a calf injury. How much of it's calf injury, how much of it's contract, we don't know. But the rubber's going to meet the road here pretty soon because he's got performance bonuses. He's got some things that he needs to do. Plus, if he doesn't play in games, he doesn't get checks. Now, he could allow the 49ers to put him on IR, and he would still get paid. That is definitely an option that he could take. But what does that do for his stock next year when he hits free agency? One of the things that needs to happen is he needs to get on the field and prove that last year wasn't a fluke. That last year he could back up what he did last year this year. And so I think that there is going to be a push for Jauan Jennings to get on the field by the team. But I think at some point, him and his agent got to look at each other and say, you know what? I need to get on the field as well. Now, maybe it's the calf. I don't know this for sure. I just know that there's more contract stuff coming out about it. And so we'll see what happens with Jauan Jennings. My belief has been, and as of right now, I still believe the same thing, barring something happening, that Jauan Jennings will be on the field week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. I won't be surprised if Monday's bonus practice or Tuesday's practice, Jauan Jennings isn't out there preparing for the Seahawks. So we'll see what happens. That's still my belief. Now, Ricky Pearsall is right there. If Jauan's not in, Ricky Pearsall's wide receiver 1. I think if Jauan's in, Pearsall will be wide receiver 2. The only reason I believe that is I think that Jawan Jennings would get the X reps and Ricky Pearsall would get the Z reps. So that's wide receiver 1 is X, wide receiver 2 is Z. That's the reason I got him in that category. No different than Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. It was wide receiver 1 was the X, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 2 was Deebo Samuel. So that's kind of how we see it. And I expect Ricky to have a really good season this year. And you know what? Just because he's wide receiver 2 in this offense doesn't mean he won't be wide receiver option number 1 for Brock Purdy early in the season, as they've built a rapport and a chemistry. And I think we saw that in the week 2 preseason game where Ricky Pearsall and Brock Purdy were humming. And so I think that that's something they can build on. And I'm super excited to see the development of Ricky Pearsall and Brock Purdy together, because this is a relationship the 49ers are hoping to keep together for at least this year plus 3 more seasons. And so these guys can build a real tandem together. And I think that's something the 49ers really love. Now, I think wide receiver 3 on this depth chart is going to be Russell Gage. The 49ers just re-added him to the 53-man roster a couple of days ago, and he was the guy that I kind of picked to be wide receiver 3 a while back. And he's going to take over that role right now, and he's a guy that just knows how to find places to get open. He's good at reading zone coverage. He's got good hands, really good red zone threat. If you go back and you watch some of his previous history in the NFL, he's been very good around the red zone. Years where he's had 7+ touchdowns. And when he played with Tom Brady in 2020, he made a lot of big plays for that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. So this is a guy that's had 2 750-yard seasons in his career. He's not a slouch. He's a proven NFL wide receiver who had dealt with an injury, and that's why he's trying to work his way back. Is he as dynamic as he used to be? No. Is he as smart and as technical as ever? Yes. Good routes, knows where to be, knows what to do. A professional wide receiver. So that's why I love him. And I think if you have Jawan, you have Ricky, and you have Russell Gage early, I think they're going to be just fine if they go to 11 personnel. I don't think there's going to be a ton of 11 personnel, but with that, I think they're going to be just fine. And he can kind of move around the offense a little bit. Then you've got Sky Moore. And, I don't know if Sky Moore or Jordan Watkins, where they're going to be at on the depth chart. If Watkins is healthy, I think he will be ahead of Sky Moore because of his abilities, to kind of step up and make some plays. And we've seen some of the vertical threats that he could do. I think the injury set him back. And, Kyle Shanahan alluded to that. He said, he was trending to be able to help us early on in the season, but this injury, that might derail that. So we don't know what Jordan Watkins is going to be. He's getting back out there. He's working. So we'll see what happens. And he could also be a roster move. 49ers could end up putting him on IR if he's not completely healthy. If they decide to go with Kendrick Bourne, we'll see what happens. Now, I don't think that Sky Moore, I think he's going to be very much a gadget player, some push passes, some jet sweeps, some quick screens. There's some things to like. Now, there was one play in the preseason, and I broke this down on Patreon, where he was on the backside and they ran a play action. He slipped across the line of scrimmage, and I think it was Carter Bradley hit him in stride. And if he turns up the field and gets vertical, it's a touchdown. I mean, he had that much space. Everyone was fooled on the play action. It was a great play, and he just didn't. He ran towards the sideline first, and then he tried to stop, even though none of those guys would have been able to catch him. I just don't know. It was one of those moments where you're like, Sky, what are you doing? This was a whole shot touchdown, a big play, a game changer. Those types of things are going to happen when you run an offense through Christian McCaffrey and you rely on the running game. When Sky Moore's out there, he can kind of disappear. He can kind of all of a sudden they don't see him, they don't pay attention to him, and he makes a big play. So I think that he can have some opportunities, but I think he's going to be more of a gadget guy, especially early in the season, as he kind of acclimates to this offense. And then I want to talk about MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He did sign officially to the 49ers practice squad. He is practicing with the team, and this guy understands Seattle really well. He just practiced with them the entire training camp, all offseason, all preseason. He was playing with them. It was a surprise release. It surprised him. And he chose the 49ers over the Pittsburgh Steelers and his buddy, Aaron Rodgers, because he believed he had an opportunity in San Francisco. So he's going to be elevated week 1. He knows this offense. He knows the terminology pretty well. It should be a seamless transition for him. And the reason I believe he's probably going to be up there right behind Russell Gage is his ability to stretch this field vertically. He can stretch it vertically, and I think there's other routes that he's going to be able to run. I think the deep crossers, right, your over routes, your Dover routes, those things are going to be open for MVS. And I think that he adds a lot to this offense and can open up some opportunities for McCaffrey and George Kittle in the passing game underneath. And so with Pearsall and all that, you need these guys that are burners. So if Jawan Jennings isn't playing, I think there's a real chance that MVS is your starting X week 1 at Seattle. That from elevated to starting X. If Jawan is playing, I think Jawan will start at X, and you'll see MVS spell him, and they'll move MVS around. And I think your main 4 wide receivers for Seattle, if Jawan Jennings is playing, will be Jennings, Pearsall, Gage, and MVS, with a little sprinkles of Sky Moore and Jordan Watkins, depending on situation. I wouldn't even be shocked if Watkins isn't a guy that they don't have dress. We'll see what happens. I mean, you want to make sure you have enough guys, and even with all those guys healthy, it would still be 6. So we'll see what happens. And I think that Jordan Watkins is eventually going to move into a nice role for this 49ers offense, but I do think the injury set him back, and we know how Kyle feels about young guys. So having veterans like Jennings, Pearsall, Gage, and MVS, I think makes a lot of sense going against that Seattle defense, and they've got to get to their spots for Brock Purdy. So there's always a chance it won't be MVS. It'll be Robbie Chosen. I think it's MVS. I don't think MVS chooses San Francisco over Pittsburgh if it's not for the chance, the opportunity to go play right away. Let's talk about tight end. It's going to be pretty easy, right? George Kittle's number 1, Luke Farrell's number 2, Jake Tunges is number 3. Nothing more to even talk about. This depth chart is figured out. It's done deal. Tunges will be, the guy that helps on special teams. And if you go to any 3 tight end sets, you'll see him. For the most part, it'll be Kittle, it'll be Farrell, and then you'll sprinkle in Tunges, who I thought improved, pretty well during the season. I thought he did a pretty good job. Now let's go to offensive line, where it's probably a little bit more complicated just because of the question marks about injuries. But I think once you go through and you figure out injuries, this thing kind of, takes care of itself. We know the starting left tackle is going to be Trent Williams. The left guard starter is going to be Ben Barch. And the reason we know that is Barch returned to practice. And yes, he's wearing a elbow brace, and it could restrict him some. They've taken a look at it. They think he's doing the right things, that he's on the right track, and that he's going to be okay. And so Ben Barch is going to have one heck of a test playing with a elbow brace all season, especially week 1 when you're going against guys like Leonard Williams. They've got that defensive line there in Seattle, and we'll be talking about it next week, is one of the most impressive defensive lines the 49ers are going to face. Their offensive line is going to get an extreme test from the day that they show up. Week 1, it's a test. And if the offensive line meets that test head on and they take it on and they win, this 49ers offense is going to be just fine all season. That's how big of a game this is. This defensive line is the best defensive line in the NFC West, and I don't even think it's close. I know that the Rams got some good young players, but this Seahawks defensive line is big. They're fast. They're strong. They're veterans. There's a lot to like there. And, the Rams are pretty good too when it comes to D-line, but this one's really good. At center, it'll be Jake Brendel. At right guard, this is another conversation. Is it going to be Dominic Pooney? Now, Dominic Pooney's trending on the right direction. He's working out on the side field, and there is a very good chance that he's going to be the starting right guard week 1. And the 49ers desperately need him to be the starting right guard. And if it's not him, it will be Connor Kobe, the rookie. And Connor Kobe did a pretty good job through the preseason and training camp. He improved a lot. So he's definitely a guy that's an ascending player, but he's got work to do. And I think if you watch the preseason, you watch the film breakdowns, he's got work to do. And you don't really want him to have to work on those things against the Seahawks defense, who are big, fast, strong, and understand how to play defensive football in the NFL. So there are some things that he needs to get better at. So we're hoping it's Pooney, so that way he can continue to work on those. And when they call on Connor Kobe, he's more prepared than week 1. And if he's out there, we know he'll compete. He'll do the best he can. but it's still the best for the 49ers to have Dominic Pooney. And then at right tackle, Colton McKivitz. McKivitz has kind of established himself now as a mainstay, but he's going into a contract year. He wants to prove that he is a big-time offensive tackle. He knows there's money out there. He just seen backup tackle from the 49ers get $15 million per year. He knows that there's a $20+ million contract out there for him. Maybe it's from the 49ers. Maybe it's from another team. But he's going to go out there and try to prove it. Now, your sixth offensive lineman, your first guy in is Spencer Burford. And I would even argue, if I was the offensive line coach, and I'm not, that I would go Spencer Burford at right guard in place of Connor Kobe. If he was starting, I would rather go Burford, the experience going against that Seahawks defense early. But Spencer Burford has been a really good left tackle, especially through the last two games. Now, it's still not perfect. There's still a lot of work to do, but he improved mightily. And I think we got to give him credit for that. Is he Jalen Moore yet? I don't think so. I think Jalen Moore was still a better tackle at this point than he was. But he hasn't had as much time in the NFL at the position. Let's hope he gets a lot of growth. And, hey, Trent Williams, stay healthy. So that way Spencer Burford has time to get better. But Burford is the offensive lineman number 6. Your backup center is going to be Matt Hennessy. He's going to be the guy that goes in if Jake Brendel, needs a break. And then your backup guard is Connor Kobe. He can play left and he can play right guard. And those guys are going to be available game day. You have to have a backup center. You have to have a backup guard. So I expect the 49ers to dress, 8 offensive linemen. Of course, they have 10. So maybe they'll actually dress 9 offensive linemen. I do not expect them to dress Drew Moss. I think he's going to be inactive. I think they want to carry him on this team. They want him to get better. I do not expect him to be dressed because you don't need that many offensive linemen headed into week, or into the day. So you're going to have Austin Pleasance. He's going to play right tackle. You have Spencer Burford. He can play left tackle. You have Connor Kobe that can play either guard spot. Same with Matt Hennessy. And then you have Hennessy that can play center. I don't think Drew Moss is going to be on the active roster. On the game day roster for week 1. And I think it'll be like that most of the year. They do this with other players. They did it with Nick Sakel one year as they were carrying him to try to continue to develop him. So that's where Moss is. So that's how you got it. You got Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colt McKivitz. That's your starting offensive line. Spencer Burford is your first tackle in. That's your best, sub that you have. He's going to be also the backup left tackle. The backup right tackle is Austin Pleasance. Your backup guard is Connor Kobe, and your backup center is Matt Hennessy. That is the way they've built it. Drew Moss is another backup guard, and I think he's the one that ends up being inactive on game days early in the season. So that is the breakdown of the 49ers depth chart. So the starting offense, Brock Purdy's at quarterback. McCaffrey and Kyle Juszczyk are your running backs. George Kittle at tight end. Across the board, when it comes to offensive line, Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colt McKivitz, and then your starting wide receivers, Ricky Pearsall at Z. If Jawan Jennings is ready to go, it will be Jawan Jennings. If Jawan Jennings is not ready to go, it will more than likely be Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who starts at X. I expect for Russell Gage to get some time at X and Z and be one of those subs. But that's kind of how the 49ers offense looks. Is it perfect? No, I think there's still question marks at wide receiver. The thing is 5, 6, 7 weeks from now, this 49ers wide receiver room could look extremely different. Number one, Kendrick Bourne could sign, on Monday. That would change the dynamics of this wide receiver room as well. But you also are going to have Demarcus Robinson coming back, after week 3. So Jaguars week 4, he comes back. That's going to be a huge add. Week, 7, 8, probably get back Brandon Ayuk. That changes everything. I mean, this wide receiver room is going to go from question marks to extremely deep and strong. And so I'm excited about this 49ers offense, but we're going to be talking all about this offense and how it compares to the Seattle defense. We're going to go through key matchups, all that during the week. So be on the lookout for all the episodes as we prepare for 49ers versus Seahawks. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating if you feel like I deserve it. And of course, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.